Hello, everyone, and welcome for today's session. I'm Andrea, your host for today's Hardware I/O webinar. I'm glad to welcome Sachin, who will present Doing More with Less, Hardware Security Primitives, Reusing Existing Circuits for Secure System and Chips. Before we start the presentation, I'd like to share some Hardware I/O news. We just finished last week our successful Germany trainings, where more than 40 students learned about various hardware security topics. I want to thank you again for all trainers and all students for making this happen. And now that the Germany trainings are over, we are all focused on our Hardware I/O USA event. Please check out our website and also submit your research on for our call for papers, which is still open for 2 more weeks. And you can also register for the conference and the trainings. I will share the links in the chat box on Zoom later on. So today, our presenter is Sachin, who is currently pursuing his PhD in electrical and computer engineering at the National University of Singapore. His research interests include hardware security primitives and in-memory compute accelerators. And today's webinar will cover these topics. The presentation will explore the basics, prior art and state-of-the-art design for the TRNG and PUF security primitives. 2 novel architectures will be then discussed, reusing existing circuits for these hardware security primitives on any SoCs. Before we start, just a little housekeeping. The presentation will take 30 minutes, followed by a 10-minute Q&A. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box and we will read them out loud at the end, and Sachin will answer these questions. A recorded version of the webinar will be later available on our YouTube channel, so keep an eye on that as well. And without further ado, I would like to invite you, Sachin, to start your presentation. I will stop sharing my screen and handing over to you.
So I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, everything's good.
Yeah, so let's start. So first of all, I want to thank Hardware.io team for this kind invitation to present my PhD research work. And hello, everyone. My name is Sachin Taneja, and I'm a final year PhD student at National University of Singapore. Today, we are going to discuss about the hardware security primitives, reusing existing circuits for secure system on chips. And the title would be that doing more, and we have to use as less as possible or existing circuits. So here is the quick introduction about myself. I come from India, where I did my all undergraduate education. Then I moved to industry, working with Synopsys India Private Limited as a memory design engineer. Then I moved back to academia to pursue my PhD from 2017, and my research work was related to the novel hardware security primitives. And I also work on in-memory computation accelerators. So here is the outline of my presentation. So we'll start with the motivation and the overview of the field. Then we'll go through the background and the basics for the secure integrated systems and system on chips. Then we'll go through the hardware security primitives basics and conventional approaches and the latest state-of-the-art designs. And these are the primitives that we are going to talk about. First is the true random number generator, or TRNG. And the second one is the physically unclonable function, or PUF. And the 2 research work that I'm going to present today is first, a TRNG by reusing the existing cryptographic core, and second, a unified TRNG and PUF design reusing existing embedded memories. Then I'll present the conclusions. So starting with the motivation, I think I don't have to motivate this audience that we are facing the billions of devices, and these are growing in nature and operating in the field, which is commonly known as Internet of Things. As these devices are present in the field, they have huge physical attacks, and the attack surface that is increasing day by day. So how we are handling this problem? We are handling this problem through conventional cryptography that enforces the confidentiality, authentication, and other cryptographic schemes through cryptography. And recently, hardware security protocols are also emerging that relates to the privacy preserved protocols, where we don't have to put up our personal details or the related details for the node. So a typical SOC will look something like this, where we have a sensor node or a IoT SOC that is operating, where we have a computation stack as well as the storage block, as well as some security protocols unit that are required to enforce the security. So how do we ensure the security? We basically establish the root of trust. And how do we establish this root of trust? By putting up the assets on the silicon chips that are also known as random keys, or the identities of the those particular chips. And how do we achieve them? It's through the Nova. Conventionally, we used to do it by storing these identities into the non-volatile memory. The emerging approach is through using the physically unclonable function. And this root of trust is then communicated and preserved across whole network by using a lot of security primitives in addition to the cryptographic primitives. So moving on to the basics of these primitives. So the first one is the true random number generator, or commonly known as the dynamic entropy. By dynamic entropy means it's the time varying random output. In analogy, we can see this as a random dice that is getting rolled again and again on a silicon chip, and we get unpredictable output every time. And which physical phenomena we have to exploit? We have to use the random noise and convert it into a random output. And where it finds the application, it is commonly used in all the key generation and the random nonce or the padding required in most of the cryptographic protocols. And the second primitive that we are going to talk about today is that it's the static entropy, or physically unclonable functions, or PUF. By static entropy means it's the random output, but that is time repeatable. So it's nothing but a silicon fingerprint that is very analogous to human fingerprints. So which physical phenomena we are exploiting for these kind of primitives? These are manufacturing tolerance that are present on the transistors that we use to build our modern day chips. Where this primitive finds the application, it's commonly used to implement the volatile chip IDs or the cryptographic key generation. Last but not the least, we need storage elements to store the intermediate states of the cryptographic algorithm as well. For that, SRAM, or static random access memory, is commonly used. And the application is the temporary storage on the chip. So going on to the next topic, that is design challenges for these primitives. So the first challenge that is related to the design of this primitives are energy efficiency. And by energy efficiency, I mean that how much energy we are using to execute a particular operation or to achieve a task. And why it is important? Because it directly impacts the battery life, and we need as high battery life as possible for a fixed energy source. And the second challenge is related to the area efficiency, because that decides how much cost effective our solution is. And basically we are taking up a constant resource or silicon area, and we are putting more and more functionality if we are getting the higher area efficiency. And that is nothing but the Moore's law. So we can see that from this curve that plots the Moore's law from 1960s, that we are actually at the plateau region in 2020s and later on, where we are seeing the Moore's law to be slowing down. So we have to put more and more innovative solutions to achieve higher area efficiency as well as the energy efficiency. So last but not the least, all those area and energy efficiency parameters are related to the regular chip design. But for the security design, we have to look into the physical attacks as well, because most of these chips are operating in the field that is very much prone to physical access, and many attacks can be performed like side channel and probing attacks. So for the physical structure, there are typical structure that are array or regular based versus non-regular based. So in the die that we can see on the bottom side, it's Intel Haswell microprocessor. We can see that there are clear regions where we can see the regularity, and there are regions where we don't see any regularity, or those are scattered regions. So all those scattered regions are less prone to becoming victims, because regular structures can be easily identified and attacked. And the second important parameter is data locality. So by data locality means there should be very low data movement across the die. And this leads to energy as well as the security benefits. And the example could be that a secure data that is only required for this core should remain isolated in this core and should not travel to higher and the other places, because then other because the data is traveling across the course, it can become easy victim to the attack and to the attacker, and leaves the attack point. So going on to the next topic, we'll see the prior art, that how these primitives are designed in the conventional approaches for the true random number generator first. So the prior art for TRNG, and the first approach is the metastability based true random number generator. In this, a common approach is to use a cross-coupled inverter that is shown in the right-hand side figure. It acts as a differential noise amplifier. So what people do is that there is a metastability state that we can see on this graph. It's very analogous to a seesaw or a weighing scale that we encounter in our daily lives. So what we have is, if A and B are forced to a state where both of them are equal, this is not a stable state, because this element is a bistable element where A and B are complementary in nature. So as soon as we put this element into the astable state, it comes back into the stable state, and that this dynamics is determined by the noise. But for this operation, we need very symmetrical elements of these two inverters. So this approach becomes victim to the manufacturing tolerance that mandates the on-chip calibration that is very commonly required. And this type of architecture is commonly found in the Intel microprocessor back from 2007. Moving on to the next approach, that is based on the jitter, or the timing deviation of the frequency. So as we all know from our basic digital classes, we have ring oscillator, which is nothing but odd number of inverters connected in a loop. So we can see a ring oscillator that connects 5 inverters in a loop, and this is a astable loop. So it keeps on oscillating between 0 and 1 stage. So what type of entropy element we target in this kind of structure? We take accumulated jitter, and jitter is nothing but the deviation from the ideal edge. So we take and integrate the jitter across n cycles, and then we sample it and take it out as a random bit. By no means this is a comprehensive survey, and we can go and exploit many other primitives and physical phenomena to generate true random number generators. So one of the old method is direct noise amplification and chaos, and many other hybrid topologies that are coming up these days. So as we have studied that true random number generators can be designed as a standalone primitives, but in our work, what we have achieved is that we have used an existing cryptographic core like AES, and we have generated a true random number generator inside that. And we are calling this a unified architecture, because we are using a single cryptographic core as a cryptographic core as well as a true random number generator. So how conventional architecture for true random number generator looks like? We have a raw true random number generator that we have discussed 2 slides back. And then we have a post-processing to improve the statistical properties of the imperfections that are introduced in this TRNG by the manufacturing tolerance. And then the output that is generated by this TRNG is commonly used as a secure key in the private key cryptographic protocol. Then we perform private key cryptographic encryption, that is AES or any other algorithm. But there are challenges with this kind of approach. We have separate TRNG and the cryptographic code, and we have to design the true random number generator using custom design techniques by crafting each and every transistor through hands, and requires high design expertise. And it's also very sensitive to operating condition, and it requires on-chip or off-chip calibration that may lead to high testing costs. So how we have solved this problem? So basically we have merged these three primitives in a single primitive, that is cryptographic core. So we are using an existing cryptographic core as a whole chain, and we have merged the whole signal chain into a single block. And why we are doing that? Basically, we are reusing the existing circuit that leads to higher area efficiency as well as energy efficiency as well. And the main challenge or the advantage that we get through this approach is that now we have the same core, so the data transfer will be less between the true random number generator and the private key cryptographic core, and that leads to basically higher data locality. So how we have achieved this aim? We have studied few cryptographic properties and acquired some fundamental observation about them. This is related to the Shannon confusion and diffusion properties that ensures that these cryptographic protocols or the hardware, one is shown on the left hand side. This is a common Feastel network where we have a data path that contains a input that is to be encrypted. Then we basically put up into the data path where it gets encrypted or transformed into the ciphertext through multiple rounds. So what these paths in general have, they have regular paths because each and every bit has to go through similar kind of transformation, and they are inverting in nature. That is by the Shannon and confusion and diffusion properties. And Shannon confusion and diffusion properties also ensures that these paths have to be basically unbiased in nature. So we extensively use XOR gates in these kind of cryptographic algorithms. So we have designed this kind of algorithm with a one kind of clocking scheme that is known as pulse latch clocking. So in general circuits, we have clock as a sequencing timestamp. In these kind of architecture, where we used a clock that is pulsed or duty cycled in nature. So for the default case, this pulse width duty cycle is 50%. So for these kind of architecture, we have to use the limited duty cycle in order to ensure a timing constraint that is related to the min delay timing constraint, or commonly known as hold time timing constraint. So now we have the cryptographic architecture. How can we induce the errors? So for that, we have used the clock pulse width, this pulse width as a runtime knob. How we are achieving that? We basically operate in the stretched pulse width mode. And when we stretch the pulse width, these architectures have the sequential element. That's what we discussed few slides back. That is related to the metastability. And if we stretch the pulse width further, we get loop region. Loop region is nothing but because these are inverting loops. So it resembles the ring oscillator that we have discussed. So in a way, we can use a clock pulse width and operate in a cryptographic core mode or in the random number generation mode, either by exploiting the metastability or by loop region by setting the respective clock pulse width. So this is a very minor change that we have performed. We have fabricated a silicon that features this kind of architecture in 40 nanometer CMOS. And this silicon was put into a custom measurement using all the standard industry tools. And we have characterized the operation. So this slide shows the measured operation. So we have measured the output nature of the data while sweeping the clock pulse width, as we have seen in the previous slide. So we can see that when we are operating in a limited clock pulse width, which is the conventional mode of operation of pulse latch architecture, we operate as a cryptographic core and we have zero Shannon entropy. That means the time-based operation is nearly constant. But as soon as we move on to the extended pulse width, which violates the timing or generates a loop, we can see that we are generating a entropy that is very close to 1. So this mode is working as a true random number generator. So now we are using a single core and we are getting both of the operations. So summarizing this topic, we have reused the cryptographic core as a true random number generator, and we have used the minor trick to play with the clock pulse width in the pulse latch based architecture. So what we have gained on the top level, it's the data locality. Now the key is generated where it has to be utilized. So it has higher physical attack resilience. What we have achieved compared to the state of the art, there's a fully synthesizable design. We don't have to custom tweak the transistors to generate the random bits. And this is all digital design. So any designer can write a Verilog and generate this design and this does not require any calibration. And in addition, we have reported the highest area efficiency compared to the earlier solution. And to the best of our knowledge, it's the first ever reported implementation that unifies the cryptographic core and the true random number generator. And from its all the properties that we have discussed, it's very suitable for low cost and the secure SOCs. Moving on to the next topic, it's physically unclonable functions. So now we'll study the prior art and the approaches that are commonly used to generate these primitives. So a very common approach to generate the physically unclonable function or the static entropy output is the static random access memory or SRAM, where we power up the memory and the output that we obtained is the random output. So we can see on the right hand side a common 6 transistor memory or cell has a random output value that is shown here as a fingerprint. And going on to the next approach, which combines this approach as well as the delay based approach. This was proposed back in 2014 by researchers from Intel. It's a hybrid version of a 6 transistor SRAM where the cross coupled inverter is there, and they also use the delay to introduce the additional randomness. And by no means this is the comprehensive survey. So these two are most common approach, and there are many other approaches based on only on delay, and there are emerging approaches based on analog cells like current mirror and many other. And if you want to go through the research, the whole overview, I suggest you to go through this research overview paper that I've written with my PhD advisor, which was published in CICC 2019. So so moving on to the next novel primitive. So we have proposed by reusing the embedded memories, which are omnipresent on any silicon chip, and we can generate the true random number generator as well as the puff, and all three primitives are merged into the embedded memories with minor tweaks. So going with the conventional approach, if I have to design a SOC and that contains a secure subsystem, so I need a true random number generator, I need a physically unclonable function, and I need a storage element, which is SRAM. So going with the conventional approach, I'll design all three primitives and then I'll merge them at the integration phase. So what are the implications of this conventional approach? We get low area efficiency because we are using all of the different hardware for all three implementations. And then we have higher design effort because each and every team is designing these primitives, and then it leads to higher cost as well. And because these primitives are designed as standalone units, the data communication between them leads to lower data locality, and it may lead to lower physical attack resilience. So in countering to that, we have proposed in-memory solution. So basically using an existing SRAM, and by doing very minor tweaks, we have in-memory true random number generator as well as physically unclonable function. And we call this as a unified approach. What we achieve out of this? We get high area efficiency because we are reusing the same hardware for multiple functions. Because we are using the same function, same hardware, we have low design effort. Because we only have to design one function, but with a little bit higher complexity as compared to 3x complexity we have in the conventional approach. Now we have higher data locality because we are reusing the data, generating at the same place, and then storing it back into the SRAM to execute any cryptographic protocol. So how we are achieving this function? So basically, a typical SRAM looks like this. We have a storage element which has multiple SRAM cells. Then we have a row selector that selects a particular row. Then we have column lines that are bit lines. And then we have, in conventional, we have SRAM periphery. And we did few minor changes to enable the TRNG and PUF inside it. So we control the word line or the row level voltage from here, or either we stop it to enable the operation of TRNG and PUF. And in addition to the conventional SRAM column circuits that are present, we add few minor circuits that works on time-based circuits like comparison or counting to enable the TRNG and PUF. And I'll explain the operation in this slide. So in the blue text, we can see that how TRNG entropy is generated. So this is basically a simple column from a SRAM array that we have seen in the previous slide. So what we do is we charge this vertical line, which is commonly known as bit line. We charge it and we basically disable the row selector. So all these lines are row lines are not selected and they are clamped at 0. So what it does is we bias this capacitor into the leakage, and then it floats, and with the very slow leakage discharge operation, it accumulates noise with the time, and then we use a circuit that is shown here. We just count how much time this capacitor takes to discharge, and this resembles the true random number generator output. And for the PUF output, what we do is we select a single word line or a row, which is very common to the SRAM operation as well. And we moderately underdrive the word line, or basically lower down the supply voltage on this line. Why we do that? It's basically to emphasize the mismatch in the PUF, basically the SRAM cell. And then using this simple circuit, time to digital converter or arbiter, which is nothing but comparing the two times, we generate 2 bit out of the PUF cell. So in order to prove this concept, we made a custom silicon on 28 nanometer CMOS that has 16 kilobit SRAM, as we have discussed in the previous slide, and we have integrated small changes that leads to less than 15% area. So we have put it into the custom test structure to characterize this architecture. So I'm not going into the basic detailed measurements, but I'll summarize the measurements compared to the state of the art. So going into the qualitative comparison, we have enabled the first SRAM that has PUF and TRNG unified inside it. And this can be designed with low design effort because we are just adding few digital circuits. And this enables high area efficiency because we are using existing circuit that is embedded memory major portion to generate all three functions. And now we can enforce a higher data locality between the storage as well as the key, secure key. And this secure key is nothing but generated from physically unclonable function and true random number generator. So going into the details of the quantitative measurements, we have unified TRNG and PUF, robust operation across operating condition, targeting from very low temperature minus 10 degrees Celsius to very high temperature 75 degrees Celsius. And we have enabled the TRNG with lowest area overhead, that is 16,000 F square. where F is the minimum feature size of this technology, that is 28 nanometer or 0.028 micrometer. And for the puff, we have enabled multiple bits or 2 bits out of 1 bit cell. And in the conventional architecture, most of the architecture can only generate a single bit out of 1 bit cell. And we have reported very high throughput, up to 10 gigabits per second, suitable for most of the IoT applications. And it features very low energy, down to 78 femtojoules per bit. And this unified architecture is very suitable for low cost and secure SoCs because we are using existing circuit, that too with the minor design tweaks. And this work was published recently at ISSCC 2021. So now I'll summarize this presentation. So I think the major takeaway from my research work is that we don't have to respect the boundaries. We actually have to violate the boundaries when we are doing the innovations. So basically, we have to target application-oriented innovations. So in this work, we have targeted security-oriented innovations. So the 2 examples that I have presented going into this line of thought, that is, the first is a unified architecture for TRNG and cryptographic core by reusing the cryptographic core. And the second is we are using the embedded memories and generating a unified implementation of TRNG as well as the PUF. So moving on to the last topic, that is the future work and direction. So where should we see that these kind of innovations are going? So basically, what I have learned during my research in last 5 years is that we don't have to basically look into the single implementation or the single boundary. We basically have to do the innovation that are more oriented to the security, because security is going to be a first class metric in addition to the power performance area that we were optimizing in from last 4 decades. So the future work should focus on the innovations that are more security oriented and that needs to cut across the boundaries in the computing stack, from the circuits to the microarchitecture to the subsystem up to the application level. And when we'll see all these things in a synergy, we can have much more innovative and useful solutions that will enable the security in the next generation products. So with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be very happy to take the questions.
All right, thank you very much, Sachin. I hope you all enjoyed this amazing presentation. Now we will have some time to answer the questions that were sent to us during the presentation. There are quite some questions, so I think we can start with the first one. Have you characterized your design over the whole commercial industrial temp range? What about the behavior outside the specified range? For instance, for example, very low temperatures.
Okay, so I've skipped those details, but I'll go to the backup slides to answer the question. So for this, so we can see here is that this architecture is characterized from 0 degree to 80 degrees Celsius, and it works very fine. And this is our older measurements, and in the latest measurement, we have characterized it from minus 25 to 125 degrees Celsius. So, and that qualifies for any commercial product. And I'm not sure for industrial grade, it's from minus 40 to 125, but we were limited by the measurement setup. But I can, from my understanding, it can work from minus 40 to 150 degrees Celsius as well.
All right, thank you. Another question is, have you created a wrapper around AES for TRNG?
Okay, so I just want to mention here is that I'll go back to the slide where we have put this. Okay. So the cryptographic algorithm that we have used to demonstrate our concept was not AES, but a Simon cryptographic algorithm. But going back to the basic observations, that is related to the Shannon confusion and diffusion, most of the cryptographic algorithm shares the same properties, that is regular path and the in situ post processing. So, but we have not done the implementation with respect to AES, but I expect that with minor engineering changes, we can implement the same in the AES. And related to the wrapper, we have not implemented any wrapper to exploit both of the behavior in an application, but we have tested them separately to demonstrate the unified functionality. So I hope this answers the question.
Yes, Ashutosh said that it's good, and thank you. I see another question is, how do you do the post-processing of raw TRNG output?
Okay, so in our implementation, we have seen that although raw output was very close to output entropy was very close to 1, but it was not sufficient to pass the cryptographic requirements. So we have used a very simple post-processing algorithm or hardware, but that was done off chip. So it basically takes 4 adjacent bits and do the XOR on that. And that was done to basically put the minor entropy degradation around the range back to the range where we can put this TRNG into the environment where we can say that this gives the output that qualifies for the industrial usage, or basically the usage recommendation by the NIST, that is National Institute of Standardization and Testing, that puts up the requirement for these kind of security primitives.
Thank you, Sachin. I think that there is still time for some more questions, so let's go ahead. Are you storing the key for any temporary purpose in the memory?
Okay, so in this implementation, so again with the same, I must say the same, going with the same notion, we have demonstrated these primitives in a separate form, but we have not implemented an algorithm that can use this potential unification of all these primitives. But I can give a very simple example that whenever a key is generated, we do some computation and then we store it in the intermediate form to some kind of memory while executing a cryptographic algorithm or any security protocol. But this is case-to-case basis. But our observation while designing this approach was that there is a very constant or very common communication between the memory and the computing hardware as well as the security primitives. So that's why we merged these primitives inside the memory. But we have not demonstrated any application running on this hardware that can exploit this unification as well. Maybe we can take this as our future work to even use this primitive into the whole protocol level as well.
Yeah, and a comment on this in the chat box is that if you store the memory and if hacker attacks on that, then it will be an issue.
Correct. Yeah. So, correct. So SRAM can be attacked more. So that basically depends that how we have to implement and how much time we have to store. But I agree with the observation that if we generate the key and store it into the SRAM for a very long time, it can be attacked, as we have seen that regular structures are more easy victims. So in a way, we have to basically do this trade-off while doing the computation, basically generation of the puff and the storage of the keys. But for the true random number generator, where the keys can be generated and stored and they can be refreshed very frequently, this can be directly merged with the SRAM during the application. But for the physically unclonable function, we can generate as well as store, but for a very limited time. That basically depends how we are designing the system and what kind of attack surface is there that exposes this kind of architecture to the attack.
Thank you. Thank you, Sachin. Let's take one more question. Dimitri's question was, have you measured the quality of your RNG output against data stored in SRAM? Would it be possible to manipulate RNG output by writing specific bit patterns or using specific access timing to SRAM cells?
So that's a very good question. I have not went into that much detail, but I have a backup slide to answer this question. So so I'll go through just the very small details. So basically, we are not dependent on the kind of data that is written. So what we are actually measuring is the leakage current. So leakage current will be modified if I write some specific kind of data or the complementary data. But we are only relying on the discharge, but not the magnitude of the discharge. So going by this qualitative explanation, so I'll just point out to the measurements that we have performed. So we have stored the skewed data on the single bit line that corresponds to all same bits that is shown here 100%. And we have performed the random data storage on the bit line as well. And we can see across all these measurements across supply voltage as well as temperature, we are passing the quality of the output generated data across all of them. And the qualitative reason is that we are not dependent on the data itself. We are just using the data as a leakage source. And we are not taking the mean value of the discharge, rather than we are taking the noisy value of the LSBs. So I think it's resilient to any data pattern that is stored in the memory. So we cannot attack by writing any specific data pattern and disable the output quality or degrade the output quality.
All right. Sachin, thank you for answering all these questions. And thank you again for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Guys, please don't forget to fill in the feedback form that I shared and that will pop up after this presentation is over. It would also be great if you would give a shout out to Sachin on social media. So this concludes the webinar. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation, and see you next week. Thank you again, Sachin. It was nice to have you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.